Hello, this is Jack Downs with a video lesson for JOU206 for Wednesday the 11th, September 11th, a day when I can't be in class. However, I will be available via email should there be problems or questions. And I'm going to do a little video lesson for you, which is also a participation lesson, and you have to create a little something that you're going to have to submit to. This is going to be another one of those let's write a story together kind of things, which I'll give you some basics and let you read over the file and stuff, and then you can try some of it yourself. We are definitely, I hope you really work at some of these write this story yourself exercises, even though at this point they're not graded, but they will be, because they're giving you hopefully some of the fundamentals. But let's start by looking at the schedule. And if I go to week 3, which is what this will be, and we will have already had class on Monday, and I go down to Wednesday, and I could make that a little bit bigger too, I can see that the this is the in-class writing assignment for Wednesday, September 11th, and a note about me being away from class there. Yes, that's true. What was due today? You were supposed to have read Chapter 3 and prepared for the quiz. We keep on going through the chapters. We will run out of them very soon. I think we're only doing like the first 5. And by the way, those of you who have a request for additional time because of accessibility systems, will see that the times have expanded. Although I'm not sure how necessary it was for these quizzes. Also, remember you read the New York Times Daily, and the current events quiz is again due on Sunday. That's going to continue through most of the semester. Work on Newsroom 101 unit AP style, the first big unit, which is due another week, from a week, and some of you've already started on it. I give you advance notice that you could be beginning it earlier. So anyway, so yes, that's just quizzing, but you know, you look at the question, you go look it up, you study it a little bit in your AP style book, which you must have and you must use, especially for this stuff. You think you got it right, maybe you get it wrong, you figure out why. That's how you're learning. All right, so next class, Chapter 3 quiz. Yes, it's essentially due, and you'll see the instructions down below as usual. The chapter quiz against the Sunday, the current events quiz again. No surprise. Keep on working on that thing, and then there's online lesson work submitted on Brightspace by the end of the day. I haven't made the Dropbox assignment upload for it yet, but I will shortly. There's not much else to see here in this schedule except the normal stuff. All right, let's take a look at the assignment, or not assignment, but the discussion point, right? I will give you in my email to you this in-class write a story together kind of exercise, I'll give you this PDF here, which I'm displaying right now, right? So, as usual, what I've done is I've created this this file, which is some real stuff, except I've changed the date when the thing happened, and these are basically real facts. Maybe not as probably as many as the original writer had. This did not. I'm not sure if this appeared in the British Public. I don't think it did. It appeared elsewhere. Anyway, so let's take a look at these things together. And you should read through yours. Joshua Seymour, sophomore at Northeastern Clinton Central School, was one of the high school students who attended Wednesday's visit by high school students. High school students, high school students. That would be repetition. I don't think you want to write it like that. And as usual, that's probably not our lead. It just happens to be the first paragraph in your notes that you have here. He said he most enjoyed the titration experiment in the lab. I wish I knew what that was. But anyway. And then we have a direct quote from him. And then he said he'd likely apply to SUNY Plattsburgh. Well, yay. But what was this all about? This is an event sponsored by the chemistry department and the biochemistry department, or the chemistry and biochemistry departments. We don't capitalize names of subjects like chemistry, but the chemistry department is capitalized. Chemistry department is capitalized. Then we see 37 area high school students attended a day of fun and hands-on science experiences at SUNY Plattsburgh Wednesday, September 4, 2024. Okay. Sounds a little leady, maybe something in there. And then we have another person mentioned here. Wilson, and I don't know how you say that, chemistry major from Buffalo, was one of 3 college students to assist. So he's one of the students from here who's assisting in this thing. We have a direct quote from him. Great chance for kids to come learn about chemistry. Might help them learn what path they want to take. Didn't really figure chemistry in my junior year. I switched majors, so getting a good head start. A head start is good. Notice anything about that quote that's interesting. It's got some good stuff in it, but it's pretty long. It's 3 sentences. And as you recall, our paragraphs are seldom more than 1 or 2 sentences. There's no reason, if you have a good direct quote and you like it, there's no reason you have to use all of it, or you have to use it all in one place. You could use the first sentence or 2 in one chunk and use the second sentence as a separate chunk, or a separate chunk later in the story if you choose to. Remember, these are quotes that, with the idea is you've written these down in your notes, or you have them, and perhaps you have them in a recording too, and you have control over those. What is this here? I switched majors. It's in parentheses. We don't use parentheses much at all in journalism. We don't want to use them as a crutch for our writing. Instead, when we do use them, we use them to supply words that were implied in the quote, but the person didn't say. We use them to help make a quote make a little more sense. When I switched, my junior year when I switched majors, it just makes it a little more clear. But he didn't say the word majors, but it was implied. Okay, so we add word to a quotation, we use use parentheses to do it, and it becomes just like another word in the sentence. By the way, if we ever in a situation, you may be, and I'm not suggesting you do it here, I'll just mention it since I mentioned that, where you are going to try to remove words from a quotation. Deciding where a quote begins and ends, or breaking a quote up and using it in 2 different places, that's fine. But let's imagine you want to use a full sentence of quote. This is also a great chance for kids to come learn about chemistry. And for some reason, not in this example, but for some reason, in the example you're using, there's a really good quote, but there's this chunk of stuff in the middle of the quote, which is kind of like a tangent, not helpful, not very efficient, or something, takes away from the quote. You can always remove a chunk of stuff from within a quote and use ellipses, which is 3 dots, which indicates something has been removed. When you are using both the beginning and the end of the quote all together, but you take out a little chunk in the middle. All right, that's a tangent, which you could remove. All right, so we got a Dr. Rajesh Sunisi, professor of chemistry, said the goal of the program from the department's perspective is to plant the seeds of interest in students before they apply for colleges, get to meet our undergraduate students, organize the event with Dr. Craig Hogue, assistant professor of chemistry. Yeah, great. And then the students were on campus for half a day. They started with an overview of the departments at Sable Hall. Next, they participated in chemistry lab activity at Hudson Hall with Dr. Thomas Moffat, lecturer of chemistry and biochemistry. They listened to research presentations from current college students. And the day ended with pizza, a pizza lunch, and a chemistry-related game. Okay. I'd like you to now pause this video. Take a few minutes. Seriously, please do. Review this stuff. You have a PDF of it too. Make some notes, circle, draw, put some numbers on it, whatever, about where you think the lead information is. Start to map out the first part of the story. What's the second graph? What's the third graph? Of course, you may edit these chunks of text too, to take pieces of them out, to join pieces together, but of course, you'll make sure not to change any of the facts. So do that. And then come back when you've done that, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, and then you can complete the assignment. And I'm back again. I hope you did spend a few minutes with this, get some ideas, map it out a little bit. That's what it's all about. Okay, now let me tell you my thoughts, and I'm in a slightly different version of this now, so I can do some typing too. My thoughts are, as usual, I would say, for a basic story, we want to ask, what happened? Okay? What happened is a bunch of high school kids came to the college and had a science experience here. Could you say more than that? Yes, you could. You could just definitely tell us how many. I don't think you need to in the lead tell us where they came from exactly. You could tell us who it was sponsored by in the lead, perhaps. Yeah, if you need to, maybe. You could tell us when it happened. Yes, that would be good. Okay. And maybe you could even tell us why it happened as part of an effort to encourage people to pick the STEM area they're interested in or something like that. If we start to get on the list and start to add too many things into this, what's in the lead, all of a sudden we realize we're going to have some problems. It's going to get too long. It's going to get too complicated. We got to get people's attention, give them some basic information, and then move on to what? To a quotation, to some more background, maybe a quotation, and so on. So, again, although there isn't any single one right way to do this, there are some ways I would frown at a little bit. But I think if you look through this stuff, you pretty easily see that if you're going with a traditional kind of lead, what you have is the fact that's mentioned is something like 37 area high school students attended a day of fun and hands-on science experiences. Okay, good. I think that's the stuff you're going to use, but you're going to have to do it a little bit differently. And I would suggest it's going to be something like, let's do it up. We'll stick it right in here. Okay. Remember, we're going to do Plattsburgh, long dash, alt 0151. If you're working on a Mac, no, there's a way to do it, but I forget how. You can find out. For a long dash or M dash. M, that's EM. We say it like the letter M dash. Okay. Are we going to say 37 area high school students? No. For a couple of problems. First of all, if we started a sentence with a number, we'd have to write it out, and that'd be really ugly, writing 37 out as a word. In general, for numbers, here's the rule for numbers. In general, numbers that are 10 and above, we use as the figures, not the words. But it's too specific anyway. 37? Right? How much is that? That's about 3 dozen. That's what I would say. Right? It's sort of like gives you an idea of the size, but it doesn't have to be exact. And a dozen, of course, is 12, so 3 dozen. You can do the math, right? So I would say about 3 dozen. You could say high school from around the North Country. Or you could say North Country high school students. Or you could say area high school students. We use North Country because it's like what we call this region. You may not be familiar with that. That's okay. But you can start using it. Hey, you're in the North Country now. That's our kind of our region. Okay. So something like that. About 3 dozen North high school students from around the North Country. North Country high school students attended a what? Attended a science fun day. How about that? A day of science and fun. A day of science experiences. Something like that. Hosted by. Do you have to have this in here? No, but it's fine. You have room for it. Hosted by, let's just get the college name in. SUNY Plattsburgh Chemistry and Biochemistry departments. Something like that, maybe? Or members of the SUNY Plattsburgh Chemistry and Biochemistry departments. I would just say, so I've skipped a little bit, right? Attended a science fun day, or a day of fun in science, or a day of science experiences, or something like that, or your own version of that, hosted by members of or the SUNY Plattsburgh. That's what we are. And in our class, I'd like to make that our style. When you talk about the college, you say SUNY Plattsburgh. So, but it's SUNY Plattsburgh Chemistry and Biochemistry departments. Okay. Here's something to know. If you just said chemistry department, that would be capitalized. You said biochemistry department, that would be capitalized. But if we put things together and then make them plural, then the word department is no longer capitalized. It's like a plural thing now. It's not the exact thing. Same thing goes for streets. If you say Margaret Street, that's capitalized. You say Cornelia Street, that's capitalized. You say the corner of Margaret and Cornelia Streets, the word streets is no longer capitalized because it's not the real thing anymore. But the words Margaret and Cornelia still are. And then we're going to say when. When is it? When did this happen? We're saying that it happened Wednesday. Okay. What about September? What did I say was? September 4th. Do I say September 4th? Do I say 2024? Here's the rule. If you were publishing this in a newspaper where it was coming out like the next day or very soon afterwards, you could just use the day of the week, Wednesday. Honestly, the rule used to be, and it kind of still is, that we either use the day or the date, right? If it's within that week, we use the day. So we'd say Wednesday if it's going to be published right afterwards. Or something is going to happen Wednesday when it's like the next Wednesday, which is like in that week. Or we would say September 4, or we wouldn't say both of them. These days, honestly, we're seeing more and more people use both the day and the date in their stories. I'm not that crazy about it, but I think if you're not sure when it's going to be published or whatever, or you're expecting it to be in the archive for a long time, I think September 4 is fine. But something we don't do is we don't use the year when it happened that year. When it's this year, it's this year, right? We don't use the year. And if this is something that happens or is going to happen in a different year, then we add the year. Then we do a month date with the year. Okay. All right, so I did not really do the whole thing for you, but I talked about it and you kind of have it. What's going to come next? Well, I think you have a couple of choices here. Although it's a bit bureaucratic, I think I would probably go next to the Dr. Rajesh Sunasi, professor of chemistry, said the goal for the program from the department's point of view is plant the seeds of interest in students before they apply to colleges. And then perhaps the quotation that says, they get to meet with our undergraduate students. They get to see what kind of research is being done, he said, explaining that the visit also strengthens connections between the college and local schools. Then you could go on to the half-day of activities, what did it include, and so on. Then you could go to perhaps the Wilson, whatever his name is, with his quote, and then you could do Joshua Seymour. You could do Joshua Seymour sooner, even very soon. Or you know what? Let me suggest to you something different too. I think this is the way to go, what we started here. It's a basic lead about a basic event, and then we go to the Dr. Rajesh Sunasi, then we do his quote, then we have some more description, then we have Wilson Sudas, whatever his name is, then we have a quote from him, then we have Joshua Seymour, then we have a quote from him, and so on. Good. But another alternative would be, and we don't really quite have enough information for this, I don't think, but imagine this story. Imagine this story that said, we're gonna put a little vignette, we would call it, a little illustrative. We're gonna paint a picture. This would be an alternative lead format. You could say something like Joshua, focused or stared at the experiment. Carefully following up. Excuse that. Carefully following the professor's instructions. His eyes, that's not how you spell professor's, yes, professor's instructions. His eyes lit up when the chemical reaction was a success. The chemical reaction. And we could say focused on the experiment, sure. Joshua Seymour focused on the experiment, carefully following the professor's instructions. His eyes lit up when the chemical reaction was a success. And then we could do what? So we're imagining you were there and you saw this happen. Otherwise, we can't just make this stuff up, right? But we're imagining you were there and you saw this happen. Then you could do what? I'm a very hands-on learner. That quotation there. And then you would quickly move to, that's probably part of that. After the quote, the sophomore at Northeastern Clinton said, beaming, which is like smiling, happy or whatever. Seymour was one of about 3 dozen high school students who attended Wednesday's visit to SUNY Plattsburgh, blah, 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 blah. So if we do alternative lead format, which I'm not suggesting you do, I just want to tell you there are other ways to do this, which is a bit more colorful and involves your observations of having been there, which you weren't, so you can't really do it. Then you might go to a quote very quickly to continue that lively feeling. But then you essentially have to include, like perhaps in that second graph with the quote, the basic information that you have in your lead. When we have a basic lead information that appears later in a story because of an alternative lead format, by the way, we call that a nut graph. The nut graph is a lead-like paragraph or information in a sentence that appears in another paragraph that is not in the lead any longer because there's some kind of alternative lead. All right, what do I want you to do? I want you to not use this idea here, right? This alternative lead. I want you to use something like this, but you write it yourself. But you can still use what I've said, the ideas that I had. I want you to decide where you're going to go next, which might be Dr. Rajesh Sunisi, either his quote or just his information and then a quote, probably information and a quote, and then some description of the event, and then move on to the other people. I want you to try to get both Dr. Rajesh Sunisi and Wilson, whatever his name is, and Joshua Seymour in this text that you use in some kind of order. Do remember, they will kind of appear in chunks. We're not going to do a little bit of one guy, then go back to another person, then go to another person, then go back to the original person. They're going to appear in kind of discrete chunks as you go. So I want you to get all that together, right? So you're going to really include almost all these facts in here. You can cut some down a little bit. You could perhaps reduce the size of one of those quotes. You can change things around. Try to use everything I've told you so far and stuff you're reading about too. Do your best to pull a story together. I would suggest you shouldn't have to spend more than about an hour on this. Give yourself an hour to do it. And if it's 45 minutes, that's fine too. And then I want you to save it, save off a PDF or a Word doc, and put that in on the Brightspace assignment upload. And that's your assignment. And I will see you next class. Let me know if you have any questions or anything.